a lot of people, rightly so, should focus on customers, right? When you're in a service type company and your customers are the ones who generate revenue for you and ultimately make your company successful, it's natural to focus there. And not that that's not important, but I think you can still get some of those natural successes, like customer retention, all those different things, and still achieve those, but with a different approach. And so I noticed just, whether it was turnover or attrition, that our employee, I wasn't happy with how happy our employees were, I guess, and shifting some of the focus from what may consider a customer focus to them. It was a risk, I think more of a long-term risk than a short-term, and so, but it was something that I felt comfortable and confident.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Here's a crazy idea. You should have an employee-first focus. I say it's crazy because so many people believe that you have to put customers first. And I believe that customers are absolutely critical to the success of your company. But I know fast growth companies, all the conversations I've had, all the interviews, so many of these leaders believe that they should put employee first. Employees first really is not a revolutionary idea, but it's very different than what a lot of corporations do and what a lot of general practices of management is. And so I really wanted to look at it today, not from my teaching you about how this works, but through the eyes of a founder of a fast growth company. Today we're talking with Cory Brymer, and he is the founder of BryComm. And BryComm has been on the Inc. list before, but they made a shift about 5 years ago to create an employee-first focus. And what that has done to the bottom line of the business, what that's done to the overall employee retention. Now, is it absolutely fixed everything? Well, of course not, because companies evolve. And right now, what they're experiencing is tremendous amount of growth. They're in the Austin area, and all the prices of materials are moving up, and people are not very plentiful. So it's even more important to create an employee-first focus as a company that's growing that fast. We look at all of the different aspects today. What you'll learn today really will help you become a better leader. If you have any questions about what your next steps are as a leader, then one of the things I do is offer a chance to go over what I call a growth call. What is keeping you from growing? What do you need to activate and focus on to grow? I've done hundreds and hundreds of these. I'd love to help you grow your business. All you have to do is reach out to me at genehammett.com. You can go to Start Your Journey, and it'll help you understand what your next step is when we have a one-on-one conversation. This is not cookie cutter approach. There's not a video for it. There's not a book that you can read. I'm going to help you zero in on exactly what you should be focused on, where you should put your energy, where you should invest your money. I do this as a third party. I do it all the time, and I'm right so many times, and I want to give that insight to you. So if you really feel like you want to grow your business more, you want to be a better leader, then just go to genehammett.com and sign up for a call with me. Now here's the interview with Cory. Cory, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Gene. How are you?
I am great. Excited to have you on the podcast to talk about growth and people and leadership. Before we get started, I've already let our audience know a little bit about you and what we talk about today, but I'd love for you to introduce your company. So tell us about BryComm.
Yeah, so BryComm is a technology solutions provider where we do design, installation, service, and maintenance around the network, basically, and then the various systems that connect to it. Think your Cat6 cabling, your fiber optics, those sort of things in a commercial environment is what we do on the construction side, and we service those on the back end with those customers. We've been founded in 2008, really been in 10 years in operation, about 200 to 250 employees right now, fluctuates depending on demand. Sort of captured the market, I would say, here in Austin, Texas, where we're headquartered. We have office in Dallas and San Antonio as well, and looking to expand and grow. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we are excited to have you. We only bring on people that we've really found that have had tremendous results, and making the Inc. list is just part of that. But you did make the Inc. list a couple of times over the years. What was that honor like for you?
It was good recognition, I would say. I would say that wasn't a goal of mine when I started the company, was to get on all these lists and awards, but I think just knowing the kind of hard work that went into growing the company and growing it quickly, feeling and getting recognized by various associations is to me, it's a big pat on the back to myself and to my team. And those feel really good when you're when you're in the middle of growing a company and things are stressful. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
You have, talked to someone on my team. We done some research around, what really makes you guys tick. And you said there was something that really shifted about 5 years for you. I'd love for you to first tell us what that shift is. And specifically, I'm talking about the employee first focus, but what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of people, rightly so, should focus on customers, right? When you're in a service type company and your customers are the ones who generate revenue for you and ultimately make your company successful, it's natural to focus there. And not that that's not important, but I think you can still get some of those natural successes like customer retention, all those different things, and still achieve those, but with a different approach. And so I noticed just, whether it was turnover or attrition, that our employee, I wasn't happy with how happy our employees were, I guess, and shifting some of the focus from what may consider a customer focus to them, it was a risk. I think more of a long-term risk than a short-term. And so, but it was something that I felt comfortable and confident in doing, that if we take care of our people, we focus on them, we lead with them in some of the decisions we make, that customer retention, the revenues, all those will be a natural byproduct of that decision. And it took a while to show that it actually worked, but after about 2 or 3 years, I could see the rewards for making that decision, and it's been something we focused on ever since, and reinforcing it internally.
You mentioned happy employees. Is there anything specific you did to measure that?
No, not early on. I think now we do a better job of doing surveys and kind of taking a temperature on people on what they like and don't like. Early on, I think it was a small enough company where I was engaging enough personally with most of the people that I kind of had a gauge on it myself. But and whether that was just sitting down and talking with some of the employees, or potentially an exit interview when somebody was leaving and asking questions, it's kind of how I ascertained that we needed to make a shift.
Cory, when you talk about the impact of employee first, it took a while to take effect, but are you measuring specific things on the bottom line that let you know that that's a contributing factor to your growth?
Yeah, so we've done a few things to try to quantify that approach, and it's never easy everyone talks about how turnover is expensive. It's an overused term, and quantifying exactly what that cost is not easy. But we've dug in as hard as we could to try to figure out how much does it cost for us to have an employee turnover in various positions. What is that? Just the cost of recruiting and going through the onboarding process and retraining and all those different things that go into it. It's expensive. And if you actually sit there and talk to some of those employees of why they left to begin with, and perhaps sometimes it was a wage discussion, or didn't get the review that they wanted with the compensation, you could elevate some of those things at the fraction of the cost of what turnover costs. So I think from just a cost standpoint, it's almost a no-brainer sometimes, because turnover is expensive, and then there's those other factors too, outside of wage, that are obviously important to a culture and company.
Now hold on for a second. Cory just talked about the difficulty in quantifying turnover. Well, a lot of the research shows that if you have knowledge-based workers, meaning people that you really expect to think and make decisions, not hourly based that you expected to get the job done, but those hourly based employees, it could cost you as much as 1 time to 1.5 times their salary. So even if we're conservative and say it's 1 time their salary, and that person's, making $100,000 a year, it would cost you $100,000 to find a new person with recruiting cost, onboard that person, train them, get them up to speed for any person that leaves. So what does that mean? Well, you have to be aware that this is costing you on your bottom line. You have to be aware that this is something that you can actually get ahead of, be proactive by creating a place that people don't want to leave from. I've worked with a lot of companies to help them do this. It all starts with leadership. It starts with you. If you have any questions about what your next step is, just reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. But the cost of turnover is likely costing you a lot more than you think it is. Now back to Cory. What had to shift in your style of leadership that allowed you to put employees first?
Um, honestly, it was honestly I didn't know I was going to answer that question, and then it just dawned on me. That's at the very beginning when I was running the entire company and it was small. I expected every person that worked for me, without knowing at the time, care about the company like I did. From the $15 an hour office admin to the tech workers in the field, and when they didn't, I would get extremely frustrated and disappointed. And it honestly took me a couple of years of realizing that these people aren't invested in the company like you are, and setting those expectations for other people is just completely unrealistic. So for me, I had to realize that I could set expectations for everybody, but they needed to be reasonable for the various positions they are in, and create structure around that so that I wasn't becoming, unnecessarily frustrated at various points, and they were, feeling like they had opportunity without these just completely unrealistic expectations they had to meet.
So again, that's a little bit about, a shift in your leadership. But is there anything specific that you worked on to like your better one-on-one meetings, better listening skills, or better delegation skills, or anything else that you think really played a factor in you becoming a stronger leader?
Communication, I would think, it's always been one of the driving things. Almost any issue or positive result you can almost attribute it back to communication in some shape or form. And so I really focused on trying to communicate better in conversations. Tell people why, not what. That's part of mentoring and developing. When making company decisions, involve more people if possible. And then when a decision is made, communicating out there, not just what the decision is, but why. So I think internal and external communication, from my perspective personally, was a huge change. I think sometimes as a CEO or a leader or owner of a business, you are fearful of kind of letting people peek behind the curtain. And I learned that there's nothing. If you're a good company and you're making decisions from a good place with good intentions, they may not always end up how you wanted them to. But I think allowing people to understand why that decision was made at that point, whether it had a good result or a bad result, has a very positive sounding effect with the culture of the company.
Now, hold on again. Cory just talked about communication, the importance of communication, improving your communication as a leader. But let me ask you, when's the last time you've actually done some very intentional work on you communicating better? Whether it be you listening at a deeper level, listening beyond the words, really listening through body language, listening for what's not being said, or just how you actually ask someone to do something, making a request. We recently had a conversation with my team who is coaching some upcoming leaders inside of organizations, and they talked about communication, specifically what we call explicit communication. And one of those employees said, I got to be honest with you, I haven't done a really good job with this, but this emerging leader knew that he could do better, and so he's working on it. So my request here is for you to reflect on where could you improve your own communication style, skills, whether it be listening or actually the talking, or maybe it's reading the social cues inside the conversation to really ask even better questions. All you have to do to communicate better is make an intention to do it and make it something that you really want to be masterful at. That will help your business grow. Back to Cory. I appreciate you saying that about communication, because of all the research I do, this is the one area where CEOs think they do a pretty good job. But if they get feedback for their employees, it's actually, they're not doing very well.
Yep. I agree.
It's kind of like the customer service surveys where they say, 80% of the companies think they do a pretty good job, and 20% of the people say, doesn't really work.
Yep.
So I want to switch gears a little bit here and kind of look at your own inside the company. I talk a lot about in my private coaching with clients, what are the rituals that we have? Some are good, some are bad, but let's look at some of the good rituals that you guys do on a regular basis that allow you to be the company you are. What comes to mind when I talk about rituals?
Yeah, so I think that comes down to, kind of what your mission and your vision of your company are, and developing core values and sticking to those core values and using those, taking the time, I guess, initially to really vet through that process and make sure you identify things that align with what my viewpoint is from the founder and CEO to my executive leadership team, and building a basis that we can operate from. And then once you've done that and you've invested the right time and you've identified those, then it's using them at every decision tree, small or large. When you struggle to know which direction to go, I think if you can go back to those core values and use that as a basis, it's going to lead you in the right direction the majority of the time. So, and that's, it's not an easy task, it's developing those and they change too, right? And I think they should change as, I think your vision shouldn't, your mission might, but in your core values, they need to fluctuate based off of what you need to as a company.
I agree with you. The values will change over time, not
Right.
too often, but
Right.
the big thing there, and I've talked about many episodes here on the show, really living the values. How do we reinforce that? So I would imagine you've gone through the process of your hiring based on your values. Is that true?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And you're onboarding with, the values in mind, giving them a good solid foundation. Is there anything you would say is unique about the way you use values inside your organization, or
I don't know if I would say unique. I would say in our specific industry, kind of skilled trade construction, it's not often found that I would say like even some of our competitors actually run their companies from the same mindset. And so I certainly know we don't do the best job at it from, an entire employer standpoint, but and I don't think my goal isn't to be the best at it. And I know we're not always going to be the best at it, but I'll always want to strive to be better at it and know that, never be comfortable with any of those core values that we've set that we're doing. Oh, we're doing a great job. We can stop doing those. I think we could always be better at any of those things and never always strive to get better at those. And we talked about employees first at the beginning, and they still are. And in the market that we're dealing with in Austin right now, it's crazy what is happening from a growth standpoint and a lack of supply on many things, but skilled labor is a big one. And we're having a lot of turnover and attrition right now, and that's one of the things that's our biggest thing that we try to keep from happening. But I kind of almost appreciate it while it's happening too, because it's showing us where we have some weaknesses right now that I know we need to fix, and that's going to make us better. And that's not always, it's not always the viewpoint every CEO is going to have, right? I think that's what's important about our culture and our people here is we look at those things and we want to gather that data to make us better.
I know that fixing that turnover thing it's such a hard thing to get your hands around because there's a lot of factors, and it's very easy to blame, well, I'm not paying enough, or someone's just paying, a stupid amount of money. I hear all the excuses, but what I always come back to is, well, when you focus on what you can control as a leader,
right,
what are those things? So just kind of curious, what are the one or two most important projects you guys are working on moving forward to improve your turnover?
It's that communication. It's the small things, honestly. It's that engagement from our executive level to our managers to our field personnel and across the whole company. I think this year has taught us we're having tremendous growth right now, which is great. A couple of very large projects that are really just sucking up a lot of our resources that we weren't prepared for. And you can see that when all the different levels of start having to kind of reach down and assist, and do project-based stuff instead of the developing and mentoring of different levels of management. You don't see it initially, but after a few months of it, you start to feel it. And, whether it's an exit interview or a discussion, at coffee in the morning, whatever it is, you start to realize that we're missing the things that we were good at, and is creating that engagement, the culture that made this company successful. And there's a lot of factors, besides just our growth. I mean, I don't think for us, COVID certainly didn't help that situation. We would do a lot of employee events and, parties and all those different types of things that we had to halt. I know we didn't do the best job of trying to come up with substitutes that created that same level of engagement, but I'm hopeful too. And now that we're coming back to this new normal, that we can start building that mortar again that made us very successful to get here.
Well, Cory, I appreciate you sharing all this with us. I want to ask you one last question, and it really has to do looking back over your different shifts and inflection points as a leader. But what's one of the biggest mistakes that taught you a lesson that you could share with us today?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think there's a few small ones. I know one of the easy ones I'll jump to and just say, investing in some software and using tools early on, even though they could be expensive. If you really plan on growing and using growth, there's no better investment than kind of getting a good system and infrastructure to collect data and use it instead of having to go back and make transitions. I've said that to a bunch of people who have asked me about, hey, should I spend money on this? QuickBooks works fine or whatever it is. I'm like, spend it. It'll be worth its weight in gold by the time you need it, if that's what your goals are. But outside of that easy question, I mean, really it is is playing the long game, is what I like to call it, and the short game at the same time, and making it a priority to make time for those sort of long game decisions that you have to do or actions that you have to take. And you may not see, the reward for some of those for months or even years, but you can't forget about them either. You can't just get stuck, attending to putting out fires all the time and being reactionary, because if you don't take the time to plan, put forethought into that, you're never going to get ahead.
Well, perfect answer to end the conversation here, Cory. Really appreciate you being on the podcast and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Gene. I appreciate it as well.
So I'm going to wrap up here. Cory's still listening in, but here's my take on today's interview with what I saw from Cory. It really is about you being clear that you need to lead this company. When he talked about playing the short game and the long game, it's very easy to just focus on that short game. And we have to do both of those. We have to balance making those investments, whether it's in people or software, but putting employees first is a long game. You have to become a different type of leader if you're going to do that. You have to create different systems and solutions. You have to spend some time, and sometimes you have to spend money, but most of the work, like communication, is absolutely free. So if you want to continue to be a great leader, drive growth, then you want to make sure you're continuing to evolve as a leader. And that's one reason why we do these interviews. If you're not sure what your next steps are, my job is to help you figure what that is. I can put a spotlight on it in 5 minutes if you want to, whether you're the bottleneck of the company or it's something else that's keeping you from growing where you want to. Just reach out to me. Just go to genehammett.com. You can find Start Your Journey. I'd love to help you and support you. It's absolutely free. If you have the right number of employees and you want to grow and you're hungry, just go to genehammett.com. As always, when you think of leadership and you think of growth think Think Tank. Lead with courage. We'll see you next time.